Da da da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes. Get those notifications out. Let people know I've gone live. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And I'm just looking through my glasses. I gave them a wipe, but seriously, it's like looking through wax paper. So if you just give me 1 second here, we will get into it. The whole plan today is to get right into the card. For the most part, when I come into my lives, like I was saying yesterday, we're going to make this short. I usually just come in and I just come right into the conversation. Whatever's top of mind, we just bite into it. We start talking. And at the end of my podcast, I pull a card. I pull my one powerful word for my deck of 54 powerful words, and we get into that topic. But the thing is, I want to make thumbnails. I want to do the fonts and the graphics on my thumbnails because that's what attracts people coming in is the thumbnail. I know for myself when I'm looking for content to digest, it's that thumbnail. It's either the colorfulness, right? The curiosity in the message it's trying to get across. But for the most part, it's the topic that is graphics right across the front of the thumbnail. And so it's important, when we're YouTube creators, that we do our very best at trying to draw in the right person to be able to even get some of the conversations that I have. I mean, if you're looking for cake recipes, I'm probably not your girl, right? But if I'm holding a piece of cake and there's nothing going on in the thumbnails and just the title, Prairie Dodgers, what's my good cheer? Well, my good cheer is maybe that cake recipe turned out and somebody's going to come in here who is probably not into the content, right? A big part of my audience is in browse, a big part of it. It is almost like 70% of my audience is people who are browsing through the content. So I would like to get into the word right away so that people, when they do come into my content, right? Now they've got the topic, they got the 54 powerful word, whether it's choice or change or forgiveness, whatever that topic is, that this is what we're going to start our live show. We're going to ruin it today because I got to explain a little bit about these little bit of changes and why I'm doing the changes. My optimistic idea is that the word will work into the flow of it because, right, there is a kind of play to how the content flows from me. Cindy would like to take all the credit for that, but sometimes Cindy needs a kick in the butt to even push that button to go live. So I take into consideration that, in order for this to work, right, I've got to be on board. Those other parts of me got to be on board, and my audience has got to be on board, and my potential audience has to have an opportunity to choose for themselves whether or not to be on board. And that's not going to happen without the fonts and the graphics on my thumbnails. So I just wanted to say that. Okay, you guys. Here we go. 3.5 hour documentary. When was the last time I watched a 3.5 hour documentary? It's been a very, very long time. I like long form content, but usually it's I'm sitting in on a seminar or there's a thought leader who's trying to imprint something important. And today it almost felt like I was being frivolous with my time, and yet I wasn't, because I really got a good understanding of where we are at. Um, uh, Evolutionize in that way, because it's only been like 150 years, and I'm looking at some of these characters in history and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, like barbarics. And that's not true to say, because some of these people are highly loved and respected, and are written down as great figures in life. But right, we didn't always get it right. We kind of think that just because we are up there and we have the money and we have the power and we have the backup of other higher ups and other networks, right? That we think that possibly that we are invincible. And so we go about doing things that, well, probably isn't the better interest for ourselves or the better interest for the bigger plan. And I don't think any of us know truly what that bigger plan is. I'm not out there searching for it. I understand in my curiosity and some of the topics that I move in that something somewhere someday might come across my path. But in that moment, I am grateful that I can be myself, that I can be somebody that stumbles along and that doesn't have to put that. Well, I feel the pressure. I do feel that need to come to the surface and to make some great strides and some great movement and to keep up with this digital age, right? This age of, well, it is a digital age, but it is artificial intelligence learning, and in fact, AI learning is only a subcategory of the digital age. Even though I thought, even before I went to research it, that it was actually its own category, like one step up. Like we started with the betas, then we went to the VHS, and then we went to the DVDs, and right now we got Netflix. Now we got Netflix. Pay-per-view? Do we have like pay-per-view still? I don't know. It has been a while since I've been on TV, but like I said, 3.5 hours. Yeah, three hours and 26 minutes. And I didn't miss 30 seconds of this documentary. I sat through the whole thing, and it was right. I barely even got up out of my chair. I found it very interesting. And when I was a little kid, Anastasia, right? It was one of my favorite stories. And there was a movie too, that was made on an Ingrid Bergman, and she was in it. And I just loved that movie. I just love the possibility that there was royalty out there living like a regular person, and possibly they didn't even know that they were royalty. Got me to thinking about things, and watching this, the Romanovs, is what this documentary was, that that every king, every emperor, every every leader of that family that came into power uh was, for the most part, a boy. The only time they swayed from that one was maybe a little bit of power takeover. And I do believe there were like one legitimate, when there were no more male heirs, that they were able to go in and get one of the sisters. I think it was Peter the Great sister or something, that she got to be empress, right? And I'm thinking, it's kind of crazy that normally it is the boys. It's usually the first son, and then all the rest of them are just kind of off to the wayside, like the spares, right? This, right? Like we have now. But in the 14, 15, 16, 1700s, the odds of surviving for an infant, a child, right, into adulthood was so minor. So even though a lot of these kings and emperors, they had like 10, 11, 12, 13 kids, that possibly maybe only one male heir would survive, and maybe that one male heir would not be healthy, and then once they came into line and power, maybe might not have survived very long, maybe might not have been able to survive long enough to pass their genes on to the next generation. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, right? How many great female leaders have we had in history? Just off the top of my mind, I can think of so many: Nefertiti, Cleopatra, Queen Elizabeth was a great leader. But the first Queen Elizabeth was a great leader too. But there were so many others in between all of those and before those that we don't even give too much considerations, because everybody's just focused on the firstborn, the line of the boys. And oh my goodness, what if the intent of whoever or whatever was just in that line and not a procession of boys or procession of girls, but in that line of receiving that placement in leadership of whether it's a country, continent, whatever it is, right? Even within the own our own families. My mother was queen. My mother even ruled my dad. My dad would have liked to think that he was the king of the castle. We treated him like he was the king of the castle. Me specifically, I treated him like I wished he was the king of the castle, right? But my mother ruled that roost. And as much as my father brought into that family, my mother did too. She kept that house going. She kept the family together, moving forward. Like, she was the breadwinner quite often. And both my parents made good money, but my mother was a little bit more responsible with the money than my father was. Okay, so you see how if people come into my live shows, my podcasts, and across my thumbnail we got the word forgiveness. Let's say we have the word forgiveness. And I haven't talked anything about forgiveness. I've been talking here for 10 minutes now, and we haven't even brought up the topic of forgiveness. I would lose so much of my audience that popped in from the browsing part, which is the 70% of my views. 70% is the browsing, that I'd like to catch a little bit more of those. But how am I going to catch them if I can't even say on topic? I've been here 10 minutes, and anybody who pops into my live has no idea that I'd be talking about forgiveness, even though that's not the word. Well, maybe it's the word tonight. It's not the card we picked. But I just wanted to explain myself, and I kind of wanted to practice tonight because I want to bring it on line on Monday, right? We're going to end the week strong. So let's see if we can start this tomorrow. So tomorrow when we come in, we're just going to straight away go in to the powerful word. If it carries in on the conversation, yay. If it doesn't, maybe we can chit chat about something at the end that kind of comes across my mind, or topic of conversation, right? Maybe it has something to do with the word, and we can stay on that word from the moment I come live to the time the podcast is over, right? And that's a possibility too. But I don't know unless I try. Kind of tried tonight. Failed in that, right? I failed in that. We are 15 minutes now into my live, and we haven't even touched on the card. but we will start tomorrow. You guys can hold me accountable that when I come in and after my little hellos, right? Then we'll get right into the card. And maybe it'll play out through the course of my day, maybe in a lesson that I take in. Maybe we'll carry on in the conversation after, right? Working with the card. Maybe we won't, right? We're just going to feel it out and we're going to start cranking out some thumbnails. I used to do thumbnails every single day. I'd come in right after I did my live. I'd go into my thumbnail, right? And I'd do my thumbnail up and I felt good about that. But as right, I move forward, I just kind of switch things up a little bit. And the idea is to test the waters and see what works and see what doesn't work. I see I have 70% browse. I would like that 70% browse to have a good idea of what I'm talking about. I'm only laughing because on a good day, we have no idea. But it is a good time, and it sure would be nice if more people stuck around in that. Okay, you guys, let's pick our powerful word here. If you don't know, I have a deck here, 54 powerful words. It's just a first perspective. We're just going to go into it for a couple of minutes. And if it ties into the conversation, great. If it doesn't tie off and we move into something else, that's great too, right? I hope everybody's having a great day, a great evening, no matter where you are, right? It's like that saying, it's 5 o'clock somewheres, right? But if it's 5 o'clock in the morning, don't start on that bottle yet, right? I shouldn't encourage that. I'm not encouraging that. I'm just being silly in my own way. Oh my goodness, like my hair all sticking out all over the place. Okay, got a little fresh air today. Trying to make a point of getting outside every single day, even if it's for like half an hour. I'm trying to get outside. It's important. It is important. I took in a lesson too today. Was it today or yesterday? Yeah, all about Mother Nature and how amazing it is for you. And it's scientifically proven how amazingly good it is for you. Okay, here's the word. You know, in depending on what we're doing, presence is the word that we have today. You know, I'd like to think that I have a sense of presence about me. I have been one where I could start my own network of friends where, I had to be able to feel people out. And if I'm going to be in a crew that's going to go out partying or hang out at somebody's house and drink beers, we're going back a ways. I don't do that anymore. Or go and have a house party or something. I want to be able to have a sense, I guess it was control over who I was surrounding myself. I didn't understand it at the time, but I did understand that I didn't want to be around people who were going to be mean, who were going to make me feel uncomfortable or make my friends feel uncomfortable or were mean to my friends. My friends liked to party and they were rowdy on occasion, but I didn't want anything with mean intent ever, ever. I wanted us to have good times, good memories, right? And support for each other because we were a broken misfit of Christmas toys, right? Those were my crew. That was my family, and it was in that acceptance of each other's handicaps that we were able to get so close to each other. Okay, so let's just bring this back into this word presence. But I would have to put these groups together myself. Sometimes I would team up with one other person because there was always one friend of mine and who wants to do something on their own. But when you're creating, you know, your own network, it's set up for you. It's catered for you. Even the people that are in the group are catered for you, lifting for you. Sometimes you need that sandpaper. Sometimes you need that little a-hole that's going to throw beer bottles up against the wall and needs to be sorted out, because that is the change and that is the challenge. That is the adapt and conquer, the riding the waves, the the problem solving, the peacekeeping quite often. And my husband was a great instigator of trouble, but oh my goodness, when you saw him in action in peacekeeping, like there could be two mortal enemies of each other that would want to take each other's throat, and he could just jump in the middle and almost in a sacrificial way plead out a sense of peace in almost any situation. It's why his peers loved him. Even as a private, he would have master corporals and sword sergeants as friends. And if you know anything about the military, that is not the norm. It is like caste, right? That you stay in your line, you stay in your aisle, but because he was so loved, and because he was so willing to earn his spot, like he was so willing to step forward, and he would know what somebody needed, and he would offer that up even before the ask. And people loved him for it. And because he was my husband, my boyfriend, and then my fiance, and then my husband, that I was around that. And in my admiration of that, I kind of picked that up, you know? And I would have those jobs sometimes. And I would, even in my last job, there would be that peacekeeping and that sense of community and those kindnesses and those second guessing, like that, knowing what somebody needed even before they asked for that. And these are things that you get to pick up when you bring about change in your life, when you bring different aspects of living into your life. And sometimes you don't have to live that experience yourself. Sometimes it's in somebody else's experience that we get to learn by that and to appreciate that, right? I love figure skating, but I can't see anybody throwing me up in the air and catching me or me being able to keep up pace in any way, right? So sometimes we do have to live vicariously through other people, and sometimes we will learn through that. Sometimes we're just entertained by that, right? We all get to choose. I could have chosen 3 hours of voice competition or anything, right? You can watch anything on YouTube. Anything that you can watch on YouTube, you can watch it. Or anything you watch on TV, you can watch it on YouTube. And you can do so much more. Like I sit in on university lectures, that I can go into and sit in on TEDx talks or Google talks, that I could stay up on headline news, that I'm not missing out on things. Things are getting to me if they're needed for me to be informed in that, right? And also at the same time, it helps me to do this a little bit, to hyper focus on this rather than being so spread out everywheres, and knowing a little bit of something and being an expert on absolutely anything. I'm a little bit that way anyway, but yes, I learn to learn a little bit of lots of things. Okay, you guys, but that word presence, I had to hold presence in my last job, because if I didn't have that sense of presence, I would be run over by the homeless and the vulnerable in the community. I would be rolled over by the customers who were looking for a better deal. And it did happen. I got sucked into that lots and lots and lots. But I always looked at it as a way of building clientele, making money. And I know, me not being there, they're struggling because nobody could do that like I'm doing that, or that I was doing that. And I understand that my absence will be the evidence in that. And I needed that for myself. And maybe that is a guilty, egoistic thing, but it's not. It's being seen and being heard and standing my ground and being the truth teller and not being afraid to be that. And I'm good with that. I'm 100% solid in that. And you know, sometimes in the absence of my presence, that has to be the evidence. I thought my presence, my place, and my positions uphold the person that I am, that speaks for itself, right? That when I walk into a room, it's not like it's going silent, but maybe they'll notice the pink bangs. Maybe they'll notice the way I dress. Maybe it's the way I sit up straight. Maybe it's the way I say hello. Maybe it's the kindness and the consideration of me thinking forward a little bit of something that somebody needs and offering it before they have an opportunity to ask for it. So many things offer up that recognition when you walk into a room, or when you, right, you have something to say. And for me, this is all in practice, right? This is all in that, practicing my craft, that I get to be better. I couldn't even come in front of the camera for the first year. Oh, it took over a year for me to first be able to come in front of the camera. Now it's a whole lot better, but that took a lot of coming in front of the camera. I don't know how many videos I got up now, hundreds for sure, right? And yeah, it's the matter of practicing, and it does get better, right? Sometimes you'll hear, hit that button, Cindy, right? Because even though it has gotten better, sometimes I do need that little boot in the butt, that little bit of a reminder, that little bit of pep talk, cheerleading. I do need that on occasion, right? I'm no different than anybody else. I'm bumbling along just like everybody else. But sometimes in picking up along the way, people look to you because you've done it, because you're willing to make that movement when somebody else isn't, right? You're willing to have that say. You're willing to be seen. You're willing to be heard. And sometimes that's all that it takes, right? Because somebody's got to take that first step. Really, somebody really does. And it's really wonderful to take a look out at the world and see we're doing a whole lot better than the 14th, 15th, 16th, and 17th century. 100%. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I could tell some stories. And I do, and I will. But that was my practice in the word presence today. What did it say? Presence is having the determination and courage to step forward, to be seen and to be heard. What did I say? Presence, right? Sometimes it takes a little bit of courage, Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's just the way that we're brought up that we just naturally have that ingredient, right? And how amazing if we can live our lives with that confidence, because if we live our lives that way, if we're not jumping in latent state, that if we're in that practice, we're just practicing on something we already have down packed. And how amazing is that? How solid is that? Right? Okay, you guys, that's my good cheer.